Philosophy Car, Episode 2, Daydreams, Nightmares, Walter and LSD. When I was a kid, I was pretty sick, a lot. It's one of those kids who, when everyone else was outside playing, I was inside, sick. Couldn't go outside because of asthma or hay fever or whatever pollen happened to be in the air at the time. So I would go to the doctors a lot. Doctors at the Army base in Fort Dix, New Jersey. They would give me drugs for my sicknesses. I remember taking penicillin, 2 different bottles, a yellow bottle and a bluish green bottle, penicillin. Take it every day. It was supposed to help me with my sicknesses and my allergies and all that stuff. It never really seemed to help. I do remember a doctor who gave me quarters. I would go in and sit down and talk with him about whatever was going on in my life, how I felt. Didn't really realize it at the time, but he was asking me different questions than my physical health. You know, I was just a kid. He was a really nice guy. He gave me quarters every time I told him some crazy story. One of my crazy stories was about being in the bathtub, taking a bath as a kid, playing. You know, you have your toys in the bathtub, a rubber duck or a whale or a dolphin or submarines or battleships, whatever. And I remember taking a bath, and all of a sudden the bathtub got larger and larger and larger, and it turned into an ocean. I was swimming out in the ocean suddenly with dolphins jumping in and out of the water, laughing laughing at me or with me, I don't know what. Swimming in the ocean with dolphins. I remember laughing, being really happy out in the ocean, swimming with these dolphins. Music in my head, Paul McCartney, Admiral Halsey, out in the ocean. And whales all around, whales and dolphins. And at one point I became Jonah and I was inside the whale. Somehow with a candle lit inside this whale in the ocean, and I could look out through the whale's eyes. The whale's eyes were like windows, portals. Somehow I knew that the whale liked me being inside of him, liked the idea of this little boy, and him being the vessel that could take this little boy underneath the ocean to see another world, another possibility, a world that did not exist in my bathtub, a world that existed someplace else. And then he let me go, and I swam back up with the dolphins, laughing. And then my daydream evaporated when my mom opened the bathroom door. She said, "What is going on here? Why are you laughing so much?" Then the ocean became my bathtub again. My mom standing there wondering What in the hell was going on? What an imagination this kid has. Walter, my car, knows where to go. Somehow. I jump in. I start him up. I have no destination in mind. And he takes me on a trip. He takes me to the ocean. To watch the whales migrating. Spouts spitting ocean water up. Tails exiting the water beautifully, like a ballet, slipping back in effortlessly. Amazingly, propelling this giant beast, this giant friend, to different waters. And Walter somehow knows that's what I need to see the dolphins, to see the whales, to see the ocean. I know Walter very well. I can feel his transmission slip. I can feel when he needs oil. I can feel his steering wheel when the tires need just another pound of air. Just the left front tire. I can feel it. Just like he feels me and he knows where I need to go. I get this Tom Joad feeling when I'm inside of him. I'm driving down the road, hands on the wheel, hearing, listening, feeling, every part of him knowing when something's wrong, knowing when to pull over, knowing when to stop, just as he does for me, knowing when to pull over, knowing when to stop. Sitting on the beach, watching the whales and the dolphins, reflecting on place. Do I stay or do I go? Do I migrate like the whales? Do I finally in my life grow roots like the trees behind me? Like the trees behind me, digging into the soil, holding on, sucking up water, making it through the heat, making it through the rain, making it through the wind, and staying when it gets tough. Not moving like the whale, but staying. first time I took LSD, I was 24 years old. And it was at a party with my girlfriend, my sexy, fun, witty, smiling, crazy ex-cheerleader girlfriend. She invited me to this party and we went together. Mingling downstairs with friends, new people that I had never met before, people on the fringes of society who she tended to associate with, and I did too. I discovered that I was attracted to that. That's why I was attracted to her in one way. Besides her sexiness and her fun and wit and smile and everything else about her. So at this party, we decided to go upstairs where it was quieter. And the two guys that owned the house, they had a very interesting upstairs. There was mannequins and wigs and statues and paintings and sculptures. It was a beautiful place up there. A couple of bedrooms and a big open room with all the artwork and the mannequins and the wigs and all this weird stuff. And my friend asked me, she said, "Have you ever taken LSD before?" And I said, No. And she opened up a little packet and said, "Here's some. I'm going to take some. Let's have some fun. Let's play with these mannequins. And these wigs. We're up here alone. We could have some fun." And at first I said, no, I'm not into that. And she, with her smile and her fun that just exuded out of her body, convinced me very quickly, very, very quickly, to go ahead. So I did. And we were just sitting up there by ourselves talking and having fun, getting to know each other even more. And then it slowly came on. Things were starting to change. Things became fluid. They weren't as hard and rigid as they were previously. Everything was becoming jagged. It was becoming rounder, not as harsh. And slowly, I became aware that the hardwood floors were starting to flow. I looked down, and the boards were like water, becoming a river, flowing in one direction, flowing south. Slowly at first, just a trickle, a little stream, and then the boards coming together and becoming heavier water, bigger water. Like when you're standing in a wash in Arizona and it starts to rain, and a drop becomes 2 drops, becomes 3 drops. And the sand that you're standing in becomes water. And it's a tiny, tiny little stream. It's up to your ankles. Then you realize that the wash that you called a wash is actually a river. Just as the floorboards of this house are a river. And they're actually alive and moving. And you don't realize that everything around you is alive and moving. Everything. The mannequins that we were looking at earlier, the wigs that she posed with, taking off their limbs until I said, "Please stop, you're hurting them." Put her arm back on. And then the mannequin begins to talk. She says to me, "My head really hurts. That girl ripped out my hair. Tell her to please put my hair back." And you realize that everything is alive. Everything is moving. And as this floor became a river, I decided I needed to find a raft, because I didn't know how big this river would become. And so I crawled on my hands and knees, physically crawling on my hands and knees, but in my mind swimming in the river, looking for a raft. And I found a chair. The chair was my raft. She and I were upstairs for a long time. She's sitting in my lap on the raft, kissing, touching, smiling. And the river started going towards a waterfall. The waterfall going downstairs where the downstairs became an abyss. And somehow in my mind I knew that it was still the downstairs, but I knew it was also an abyss. And I couldn't go down there, down the waterfall, down the abyss. I knew somehow I would never return if I went down the waterfall. But she was able to, and she wanted to. And she did. She went down the abyss, belly first, swimming down the waterfall towards the sounds of those voices. After she left, I decided I needed to find an island. And I found one. Down the river. Floating there on my raft. And I stayed on the island. I stayed and watched the river then become an ocean. And the river surrounded me. The river that became an ocean, surrounded me. And I saw whales. Whales again. Dolphins again. always water, always dolphins, always whales. Why? Why do I see these whales? Why do I see these dolphins? I want to go swimming with them. I want to dive into the water and swim with them. This time, for this moment, I decide not to. I decide not to migrate. I decide to stay on this island by myself. And I find a blanket on the island. And I crawl underneath the blanket and let it envelop me. Just before I fell asleep, the sky opened up and became a beautiful black sky filled with stars everywhere. An infinite, infinite, infinite place of possibilities. Place where everything exists. And then I fell asleep. And I began to dream. I dreamed like I did when I was a child, remembering this moment when I was walking down the hallway as a kid, and the hallway stretching to infinity. And I looked down both ends of the hallway, to my left and to my right, and I couldn't see the end. Either way. I walked to the left, turned around, walked to the right. The hallway stretched forever. And I collapsed in the middle of the hallway. And my mom picking me up, asking me what was wrong, why I was laying in the middle of the hallway and not moving, not able to move. And I couldn't explain it to her. After all, how does a 7-year-old boy explain that he understands the vastness of the universe, the idea of infinity, and that the walls are alive? And that in the moment, these ideas had crippled me. Not in a forever catatonic state, but in a complete letting go, where nothing matters, everything is fine, and all is as it should be. And at this moment, the only moment, her arms, love, care, and worry became my whole universe. Philosophy Car, Episode 2, Daydreams, Nightmares, Walter and LSD. This episode was written and narrated by Jody Constantine. The theme song, Our Quiet Fighter, by Grackle, was inspired by Draker's Sweet Pea and Dr. Martin Luther King. Three black cats that fought, scratched, and clawed to live, love, and dream forever. The Philosophy Car is produced in Berkeley, California by Regent Hill Media.